Hey gang, Dr. Banjo here. This is a retro review of a forgotten, underrated gem known as Waxwork. So Waxwork came out in 1988 and it was directed by Anthony Hickox. Now, this film is a horror comedy. It's, for the most part, hasn't aged particularly well, but it's a great flick, and I recommend everyone see it. Pretty much, it's about this traveling wax museum. I guess it was traveling, but it just appears in this neighborhood one day, and these college students, one of them's really rich. They see it, and the girls get invited for a private screening one night at midnight. So they invite their boyfriends, and they all go to this it's called a Waxwork. They all go to this Waxwork to check out the exhibit. And they get there, and it's a bit weird. There's like this little midget and this big fucking huge guy in charge of everything, and they're looking at the wax shit. And with it's a haunted or a cursed wax museum where if you look beyond like the velvet rope, if you walk past it, you get sucked into this other dimension. And it's pretty much the exhibit, like what you're looking at, what wax sculpture is what you get thrown into. So what there was one of them was a werewolf. You see a guy turning into a werewolf in a cabin, so the kid walks past the ropes and he's transported into this world where he lives up the events that happen in the sculpture. Now, what this movie essentially is it's an anthology, like Trick or Treat, Creep Show, except it's kind of disguised that way. You don't really think of it until you're like, oh wow, there's a bunch of these little mini movies within this one movie. So what the sculptures all have in common is they're all pretty much based off old monster movies, like from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Now, there's three, I believe, stories, three main anthology stories where the people get sucked in and you're thrown into the action with them. One of them is a vampire, essentially it's based off Dracula. So this chick gets thrown in and she lives through this Dracula story, but it bases you off right at the point of the action. So there's no development, no, you don't learn anything, you're just thrown in there and it's right at the action, which is good. There's a mummy one, which was fucking awesome. Looked really cool. And a werewolf. And this werewolf costume, it was practical effects. It looks fantastic. Really good looking werewolf for this movie. And there's also a zombie one. One of the kids get thrown in. Black and white zombie, like a George Romero. Essentially Night of the Living Dead. Really cool. Not the least cool one, but it was still cool. And lastly, there was one based off Marquis de Sade, I believe you say his name. This French guy back in the 1800s was really into like S&M, whipping, fucking getting pleasure off like beating girls and shit. So there's one story based on him, and he just whips the shit out of this girl and gets like sexual thrill out of it. So the whole story takes place over them essentially going into these different wax exhibits without realizing it. And then there's this other subplot where they're trying to find the mystery behind the wax museum. Like the guy tells the cops, like, my friend's disappeared here. So they spend the whole movie trying to prove this guy's the killer, or killing his friends. And at the end of the movie, there's this big fight with all the wax museum things come alive. And you got like Jack the Ripper, Frankenstein, a fucking axe murderer guy, all fighting these other guys that came in to stop them. Like all these old guys who want to put an end to this wax museum. And it's fucking over the top and awesome. Huge fight, people getting killed, really bloody. This movie's really bloody. So, and forgot to say, this stars, what was his name again? Zach Galligan, who was the main kid from Gremlins. He's the main star in this movie, so if you liked him in Gremlins, you'll like it. Overall, it's a great movie. Totally recommend everyone check it out. And now I'm going to talk about Waxwork 2, which is just as good, if not better.